Hello, 12s. Welcome to episode number 173 of Seahawks Now. I'm Aaron Coe. This is where we dive into the news and analysis of everything Seattle Seahawks, your Super Bowl 60 champions. Make sure you like and subscribe to this podcast. It is free to you, but it helps us out a whole heck of a lot. So let's dive into what's going on right now. So, number one, the coaching staff is really starting to take shape after we weren't sure how many people were going to take off with Kubiak. Again, Clint Kubiak, last year's offensive coordinator, was hired as the head coach of the Raiders. And, would he bring some more of his offensive staff, who he was in many ways responsible for bringing in? But it sounds like they're going to keep a number of those guys. We'll see. There's still some dust to settle there. So they lose Kubiak, and as we've discussed at length, they bring in Brian Fleury. I keep wanting to say McFlurry, but it's Brian Fleury and Mike McDonald together are McFlurry, but he's just Brian Fleury when he's by himself. So they lose Janocko, the quarterback coach. He is the new offensive coordinator with the Raiders. Not a huge surprise there. Janocko's kind of followed Kubiak where he's gone, so that was a move that we kind of all thought might happen, especially with that promotion to OC. So Fleury hasn't called plays. Janocko hasn't called plays. So we'll see how both those situations work out. Obviously, Kubiak and his new offensive coordinator are going to have a lot of work to do with that struggling offensive line. And then you got Geno there at quarterback still, and you got the number one pick, presumably going to be Fernando Mendoza from Indiana, coming in to at some point take over for Geno Smith at quarterback. So that will be kind of a fun little side thing to watch, as much fun as it was to watch Pete there last year, or not fun, I guess I should say. So then the other part of it is, do they lose Alton? Who is he? Bummed that he didn't get the head coaching job. Does he end up going somewhere else? And then Mac Brown, the tight end coach, is he able to stick around? I would think so. I would think that they would stick around, but there's still dust to, like I said, still dust to settle with some of these moves. But so you lose Kubiak, you bring in Fleury. You're going to keep John Benton, which I think is a huge key. He's an outstanding offensive line coach, and we saw that over the course of the year, right? That offensive line got better and better. There was less and less hate for Anthony Bradford every week as he got a little bit more consistent, and those guys worked together a little bit more. So I'll tell you this, I like John Benton a lot. I got to talk to him one-on-one a couple days prior to the Super Bowl. Super nice guy, really cool dude, likes heavy metal. He's 61 years old, so he's kind of been there, done that with things. He doesn't have any ego, but he knows how to coach football. And I don't think he necessarily has any designs on being an OC or a head coach at this stage. He just wants to coach up those offensive linemen the best he can. And I think he does a fantastic job, and it'll be fun to talk to him again in the future. So selfishly, I'm kind of glad that he's sticking around. And then you add Daniel Stern, not the Home Alone guy, not the voice of the Wonder Years and other things that he's been in. This is the football coach. They add him as the passing game specialist. He'd been with the Ravens. I think that's a really good add. Makes a lot of sense. He knew McDonald from the Ravens situation. McDonald had been the defensive coordinator with the Ravens before being the Seahawks head coach in 2024. So that one's a good one, and it kind of takes the away the sting of Janocko taken off. It might even be a little bit of an upgrade there, not sure. And then you add this one was a little bit more surprising to me. They grab Zachary Orr from the Ravens. He had coached the inside linebacker, or he will be the inside linebackers coach with the Seahawks, coaching up Ernest Jones and others there. He's a great football coach, a defensive coordinator type that could maybe slot in if Adenderde were to take off, for a head coaching job next year or something like that. So I think he's a fantastic add to that staff. And the thing with the coaching staff is it's always going to take a little bit of time for especially a first-year head football coach to put that staff together that is just the staff that he truly wants, or because sometimes you're kind of piecemealing it together that first year, and then you get a little closer each year. So I think he's got a staff that he really likes right now with some of those additions that they've made. I don't think he wanted to lose Kubiak, of course, but I think just as he's able to evolve this head coaching spot and this coaching staff, and just understanding what works well with him and getting that complementary football that he talks about from his coordinators is very key to him having success as a head coach. Which obviously they had a little bit of success last year, did they not? He wants to keep that going though. So that I think those were some really good moves overall. The coaching staff I think is looking really strong. You hate to lose guys, but you're always going to get picked apart a little bit when you win the Super Bowl. Everybody wants your coordinators to be head coaches. Everybody wants your other assistants to be their coordinators. It's part of the game that you have to play. And the great organizations just move swiftly, get it done, find the next man up for coach, I guess. And I think McDonald and Schneider were able to do that. I think this is going to be a really nice staff. The one question being, can Flory call plays? We are not sure about that yet. We're going to find out, but they're confident in it. So, I have to have some confidence in that as well. So we'll see what happens there. Okay, so let's play a little bit of who should stay, who goes, who stays, who goes. So, again, the Seahawks don't have a ton of free agents this year, but they do have some decisions to make. We talked about Rick Woolen earlier, and I said, hey, I think you probably got to let him walk because I think he's going to command a really big contract in that 14 to 15 million a year, perhaps, maybe even more, just because of his physical traits. But he's a little inconsistent for me. So, but I really like Josh Jobe. I hope they are able to re-sign him. Now it's going to take some money as well, but he's been the primary press man corner in McDonald's system. He kind of took a lot of reps away from Rick Woolen in those certain situations, and he's gotten more consistent with covering the other team's top receiver. But he may be a 3 year, 30 to 34 million dollar type player. So it's just a matter of, does Schneider think that that's a wise move long term, or do they just try to go younger there? But I think they got to keep either Woolen or Josh Jobe. But I would keep Josh Jobe because I think it's going to cost a little bit less. And I personally just think he fits better with the system, especially in those press man situations. And he kind of gives you what you want there as far as consistency. He's not the most physically imposing athlete you've ever seen, but he just flat out gets the job done. And I think that's really important for McDonald, is just being able to trust the guys that are back there. So I think he would be a good re-sign, but I also understand that, yeah, somebody might overpay. But if they can get him in that 3 year, $30 million area, I think that would be money well spent for this football team. Okay, so one, I know I said who stays, who goes. This one, I'm a little bit hedging on this one a little bit. So Derek Young, so he's a wide receiver technically, although he's only caught 4 balls in 5 years for the Seahawks. Um, He's a very valuable special teams player, though. He was the 7th round pick in 2022. So that's 4 catches in 4 years. Math, not my strong point. That's why I write stuff and talk. But he does have 24 special teams tackles in 4 years. And he had that huge fumble recovery in the Rams playoff game that really, I mean, do they win the game without that? I don't know. Maybe they do, but that was such a huge play. So he's very good in special teams. He can also return kicks as well, which he did quite a bit this season before Rashid Shaheed came along. So he made $1.1 million this year. Keeping him for next year, the league minimum, I believe, would be 1.2 million. So if they can keep him in that area where he's kind of making the league minimum, where it's like, hey, you're mostly a special teams guy and a deep backup receiver, you want to stick around for kind of the league minimum or close to it, maybe with some, throw some incentives in there and that sort of thing. But I think he's a good keep there. But if you're having to up that at all, then I think you just you find a new guy and go young there. Not that he's old; he's only about 26. But I think if maybe you find somebody with more pass catching upside if he's going to command anything much more than the minimum. So again, hey, like I've said every episode where I've done who stays, who goes, you want to keep everybody. You want to keep Clint Kubiak. You want to keep every player. You want to keep Derek Young. We'll never forget that fumble recovery in the playoff game. But you also have to be sensible, and you got to bring in some draft picks and things like that. But I do hope they keep Derek Young. We'll just see if it's going to require more expense than McDonald and Schneider think that it is worth. So that will be one to watch going forward. Okay, so we talked about the corners a little bit. And you could lose a couple corners. We'll see what happens there. You could lose Reek Woolen and you could lose Josh Jobe to free agency. Then you're in a little bit of a bind where you're either going to have to sign a free agent or spend a top end draft pick. Well, number 32 for the Seahawks. Obviously, they don't have a very high draft pick, but their first round pick could be for a corner this year. Wouldn't surprise me at all if they brought in a guy and show him the ropes and get him in there right away. And you need somebody that fits in the system. So a guy that I really like is Colton Hood from Tennessee. He would be more along the lines of a Josh Jobe replacement. So if Josh Jobe takes off, I would look at drafting someone like Colton Hood from Tennessee. A really good press man, very physical. I think he would be another one, kind of like Witherspoon, where outplays his size a little bit. He's just 5'11", 190, but he's very physical, just a bully in man coverage. And he's got kind of that safety like physicality that we love from Devin Witherspoon. So I think that would be a pretty nice duo for the Seahawks to roll out there. That would be a lot of fun to watch that. So he's a guy that I would target. If for some reason John Schneider wanted me to make the pick, I would really look at him, especially if you lose Josh Jobe, and then certainly if you lose both of your corners, you're going to have to find a guy one way or another. So I think he would be a really good addition to the team. He does need a little work in zone coverage. I've watched some film on him. He can get a little bit lost sometimes, so they'd have to coach him up there. And then his ball tracking could be a little bit better. He's very focused on the receiver, which you want, but you also want someone who can go get the football. That's such a key in the NFL if you can get a turnover here and there. And just not lose sight of the ball. So I think he needs to be coached up there, but overall just love the physicality. I think, boy, if you threw a guy like him in there with his physicality, with Emenworry and Witherspoon, you're almost in. I don't want to say you're LOB because that's let's not disrespect them in any way, but you're going to see some even more big hits than maybe you saw this year. So we'll see what they end up drafting. Will they trade down? Will they trade up and get a bigger name? Who knows what'll happen. That's why we love to watch the NFL draft. So we'll end it here. Thank you so much for watching Seahawks Now. Remember to like and subscribe, and go Hawks.